As this is our first formal assembly, I'd like to review our expectations of your behavior in today's Balmoral Remembrance Day ceremonies. I expect you to treat with respect this formal occasion demands. It is a time where we pay respect to the thousands of our ancestors who gave of themselves, many to return disabled, some never to return. And they did this so that we could enjoy the high quality of lifestyle that we all enjoy today. Without their sacrifice, it would not be possible. Students and staff have devoted an enormous amount of time and energy organizing this day. We expect that you behave with appropriate respect. This means that if you have your hat on right now, that you remove it, and that you restrain yourself for the 45 minutes of the ceremony. This ceremony will, I hope, provoke some thought and reflection in you. And could you all stand at this time and remain standing for the entrance of the speakers? And we'll be singing "O Canada, Once There in Place."
In my introductions to Mr. Lim, because he has a very interesting story to tell us of his life since the 1920s, I would think, in Canada, but particularly with respect to the area of time surrounding the Second World War. Now, Mr. Lim could be introduced in a number of ways. I could introduce him as one of Canada's oldest private pilots. He's been flying aircraft since 1949, privately. I could also introduce him as a very experienced scuba diver. He'd been diving for about 30 years. He's also been a court interpreter. He's been a body man in a body workshop for vehicles. He's run a driving school. He's had a huge range of experiences in his life. The one he's here to talk about today is an experience that occurred during the Second World War when he was asked by an officer while he was attending the University of British Columbia. He was asked by an officer if he would volunteer to do something which would be extremely dangerous. He's going to tell you what that was. And yes, he did volunteer. And he's here to tell us about that today. And we welcome Mr. Herb Lim.
Wow. Thanks, Mr. McDonald. You sort of took the wind out of my sail. Am I speaking too close? Okay. When Mr. McDonald asked me to speak here, I had an image that it would be in a classroom. Now, this looks like a hockey night. I haven't been to a hockey game in my life, though, but I like what I see here. It's been a long time since I've been in a junior, no, it's not quite a junior high school here. And you people look bigger, healthier, prettier. I'm not trying to BSU. But I like to see, because I have grandchildren, 8 and 9. They can beat me in computers, blackjack. I lose a lot of money to them. I don't even know how to turn on a computer. So, you know, this business of me flying, scuba, it doesn't mean anything. The demand on the new generation is a lot more than it was 60 years ago. And how can I relate to you 2 generations apart? So please bear with me with what I'm going to say. I'm not a hero because I was in the Army for what I did. I'll explain that to you later. But anyways, I'm honored to be here today. I'm glad to be, at my age, I'm glad to be here anywhere today. Am I still on?
Yep.
I forgot, as you know, I'm not used to this. I'm shaking like a leaf. I was supposed to start with students, teachers, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, corporal. I see a lot of you who are immigrants. You came to Canada, or maybe your parents did, because of economic, political, or religious reasons. Whether you're from Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, I believe that you should retain your customs and your religious beliefs. These diversities is a benefit to you and to Canada if used properly. I think it will make a better and a stronger united Canada. I come not to praise wars and deaths, but to honor and remember those who made the supreme sacrifice. Someday you may be put in that position, whether you like it or not. World War II, which I'm involved with, was fought to preserve the 4 freedoms expounded by Churchill, Roosevelt. It's probably difficult for you to imagine that time, how things, or what things were like then. We did not have a booming economy. We were just coming out of the Depression. I think pot was 5 cents in those days. A pack of cigarettes, 10 cents, just to give you a comparison. I think 1 dozen eggs were 30 cents. Everything is relative, I realize that. Anyways, veterans who wear the Burma Star for service in the Far East have a poem they often recite on solemn occasions. It goes something like this. For your tomorrow, excuse me, it goes like this. When you go home, tell them of us, and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. Now that is not heard or said as much as the least would forget one, but 18,000 Burma Star veterans recite that all over the world. To me, all wars are obscene. It's a terrible waste of life and energy. Just think what we could do to alleviate the world's suffering if we had that money used the proper way. Great Britain alone, after 2 world wars, have yet to recover the lost generation they lost. Their finest youth, the bravest and the best, are usually sacrificed first. I'm a 3rd generation Canadian. My granddaughter, 5th generation. My wife Elizabeth and I have 2 sons, 2 daughters. The oldest daughter teaching school for the last 23 years. My youngest daughter works for the airlines. Her husband, a doctor, has 6 brothers who are also doctors. This is just to show you what each generation can accomplish with hard work and determination. My youngest is a self-employed businessman. Stephen, my younger one, he has a master's from University of New Haven, Connecticut, in clinical psychology. He also has a master's in clinical psychology from Los Angeles and is at present studying for his doctorate. Costs a lot of money. The US dollar is not cheap now. I graduated from Vancouver College. Anybody heard about Vancouver College here? 1? Good. The girls. The girls. 1 boy, yes. You know, I gave a speech at the university this year, and out of 300, not 1 hand showed up. Not 1 hand showed up. And I asked them, where did you come from? Outer space? Maybe I was being presumptuous. Anyways, I graduated from Vancouver College. I was the only Chinese student there besides the Chinese cook. I was already in the COTC at university. COTC means Canadian Officers Training Corps. That really exempts you from military service, and sort of exempted you from conscription to join the army. At that time, I could not vote. And at university, I could not take up medicine, law, pharmacy, accountancy, or be a teacher. After the first year, I was interviewed by a British colonel from the British Army, I guess, and he wanted Chinese-speaking volunteers to go behind the enemy lines in Malaya. Where's supposed to conduct what they call clandestine warfare and to train the locals, the tribes, in the use of firearms and explosives in preparation for the invasion of Singapore. The Canadian Army at that time had a distinction that no other country had. They cannot send you overseas to fight if you did not consent. In other words, even though you're conscripted, you can still fight the war in Canada. Consequently, we had what we call the zombie army. Anyone ever heard of the zombie army? Yeah, they don't talk about it much. Anyways, next subject. I arrived in Canada after 30 days on a boat via London, Suez Canal, Port Said, and my training started with Force 136. At the brush up with my Chinese, and the written part, of course. Thoroughly trained in the use of demolitions with plastic explosives, which was very new at that time. You can mold it, you can burn it, you can throw it around, and it won't go off. It came in 1 pound squares like a brick, and easy to carry and safe, not like nitroglycerin, especially in the heat when it starts to bleed and become very, very unstable, like nitroglycerin even. We learned about mines, time pencils, incendiaries, walk and not to run away from a charge that's ready to go off. I hope I'm not boring you. No. No, this is the only thing I can tell you. I didn't kill anybody, and obviously I didn't die. So here I am. I had to learn all about small arms, all kinds of weapons, all calibers of weapons, even enemy weapons. We had to learn even German weapons, Mannlicher, Luger, Schmeiders, which probably mean nothing to you. Kill. Close water combat. I guess it's almost like, it sounds funny. Can you hear me? Closer. Closer. All right. Forgive me. I'm not used to this. It's over. Okay, close quarter combat, silent killing. I'm not going to delve into that. You want to kill anybody silently. Don't look them in the eye. Jungle survival. You learn how to live in the jungle. Out of 100 that goes into the jungle, 80% would come down with dysentery, malaria, diarrhea, right away. Leeches, snakes abound. I don't know how Tarzan survived in his loincloth. POW means prisoner of war. We had to learn how to interrogate in Japanese and in Chinese. Parachute jumping. The landing impact is like jumping from an 18 feet high wall with full equipment, and you had to roll, otherwise you're one of the 35% casualties that they allow. You have to do a night drop, or you can't see where you're jumping into. Our operation consists of 6 to a stick. That's our team. We don't go in as an army. We went in as a team of 6. So usually we had to run and avoid enemy contact. But that's another matter. And also, we only had one chute. We didn't have a secondary or a emergency chute to go back on, because we were jumping from so low. You see in the TV, you know, when they do a parachute drop, hundreds and hundreds of chutes floating down slowly on a clear field. We only had a small clearing in the jungle, full of stumps, holes, lakes, or ponds, And if you landed one of those with 50 pounds of equipment, even though you can release your parachute with a button, that's not going to help much. After Bombay, Pune, New Delhi, Meerut, Calcutta, Madras, I finally ended up in Ceylon, now called Sri Lanka. Beautiful, beautiful island. That was our jumping off base to Malaya on Liberators. I was asked again if I wanted to change my mind about volunteering. I made my will, gave away my personal belongings, drew my operational equipment, gold sovereigns, in other words, gold coins, occupation money, lava-lavas. I call it lava-lava because it's a skirt worn by the Burmese. They don't wear trousers over there. And they're men. All our assorted weapons, our explosives, and L pills as an option in case of capture. L pills, if anyone have ever heard of it, is a cyanide pill, in case. I told them that I couldn't take pain, so they offered me 2. Not really. Two weeks before I was scheduled to jump in on the next full moon, the war ended. Upon returning to Canada, I had to sign the War Secrets Act, which silenced me for 25 years. In other words, I couldn't say what I did, where I went, and how I made out. Instead of a field commission, as promised by that British colonel who interviewed me, I came back as a private general. I came back as a private, a rank lower than when I started out. But hey, I'm alive. Who cares? As a result of the service to our country, we didn't earn the right, we earned the right to vote in '47, with all the rights and privileges that you have here now. The Chinese Exclusion Act in 1923, which completely stopped Oriental immigration into Canada. It was finally repealed in 1947, opening the gates for Asians to enter Canada. You know, I see a aura coming from some students. You know what an aura is? Anybody? It's a glow. Beautiful colors. That one yawning there. Beautiful color. Full of vibrations and energy. You can be doctors, lawyers, accountants, pharmacists, even teachers. Or even be a bum, if you want to be. Be a good bum, eh? The best you can be. Hey, I got a group here. Anyways, hey, your future is here in Canada. You have a choice of what you want to be. Protect those rights. Guard it with your life, if necessary. Canada is your country, regardless of where you came from. You have the responsibility to the next generation so that they can know and enjoy the same rights and privileges you enjoy now. I want to thank you for your attention. It wasn't easy for me to decide to come here, because I really didn't know what I was facing. But there's hope here. There's hope here for everyone. I don't care what color you are, where you're from, what your ethnic languages are, religion. You are all Canadians. Remember that. I'm proud to be a Canadian too. Thank you.
Well, you're too modest, Mr. Lim. I heard you ask a couple of moments ago, how could you possibly relate to a gymnasium of 600 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. And yet you went on to say that you trained as a young man to do terrible things in terrible times so that we could be sitting here in this gymnasium and being grateful and hopeful that none of these young people ever had to make the choice and the decisions that you made. I think you are a hero. And it sounds like others do as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow is Remembrance Day, November the 11th, and as you know, there is no school, no class. But it is not a holiday like the others. It is a day It is the day we remember the Canadians who died while serving in Canada's armed services in battles overseas. All over Canada, people will stand with their heads bowed, as we will in a few moments, at 11 a.m. tomorrow to pay tribute to those who died so that we could sit in this gymnasium. So that even if we don't have an opportunity to attend the ceremony, we should at the very least pause for a moment to reflect on the meaning of the day, because it is not just another holiday. At the very least, turn on the television set and see how the day is remembered from one side of this country to another. But what should the day, Remembrance Day, mean to you? Student, you don't remember the last war? And that's a good thing. Although some of you sitting here this morning have come from countries that are still in conflict. It wasn't long ago, really, just a few short years, that World War II ended. A long time to you, but not to some. Many of us, your teachers, parents, grandparents, lived through that war, were born during it or shortly after. So that perhaps the most important thing for you to remember is that many of the dead weren't much older than some of you right now when they went to war. They went from classrooms like ours here at Balmoral. And many of them flew bombers while they were still in their teens. Others were on beaches in France and Italy long before their 19th birthdays, I'll tell you that. Many of them died without ever reaching their 19th birthdays. The thing to remember here is that they were young, like you. We should also think of what they left behind them when they went. Oh, for some it was a romantic notion, heading off in the trains, going to a mysterious land, serving one's country, all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of them lay buried in the sand without ever seeing any of that stuff. They never came home. But those kids, they left the excitement and the magic of autumn days, just like the one we have outside, where they played rugby, the way we do, and volleyball, and field hockey, and they skied, and they waited for basketball season, and they played hockey, and they enjoyed track and field in the spring, and they went to dances like the one we're going to have in December. They were just like you. So today and tomorrow, you should wear your poppy and try to think just a bit about the young people your age who not very long ago lived in North Vancouver. They loved, they worked, they played, they went to school. And you might even recall a couple of lines from John McCrae's famous poem that begins, "In Flanders fields the poppies grow between the crosses, row on row." And wear your poppy. And pause to remind yourself how very fortunate we are in Canada. War continues, and even today is claiming the lives of people your age. Other parts of the world, not here. You know, much of the world looks at us with envy and admiration. We are a multicultural country, and Balmoral is a small part. It is a multicultural school, perhaps as much so as any other school in this country. We are learning to live together and to solve our problems together. So what can we do here in North Van at Balmoral? What should we do? Very clearly, we have a responsibility to solve our problems in non-violent ways, by listening to one another, by accepting all of this diversity and multiculturalism, no more than that, and to accept it as the real strength of this country. As Mr. Lim said, there's probably 15 different cultures represented in this room from all over the world. For too many people, violence is an ordinary way to be entertained or to settle arguments or to blow off steam. Here's a frightening statistic for you. By age 18, you will have witnessed 200,000 acts of violence on television, including 18,000 simulated murders. The American Medical Association has reviewed media violence studies and has found that violent entertainment contributes to violent behavior and is one form of violence we can each do something about. Now, I'm not suggesting we should never watch TV. I am suggesting that we should be careful and question what it is we watch. It's true. Anger is a natural and acceptable feeling that everybody experiences. Conflicts and disagreements are normal and actually can be a useful force in encouraging positive change and growth in all of us. How we respond, however, when we are angry is a personal choice. You can choose how you are going to respond. So today is a special event in this school. This simple ceremony here is a very symbolic one that speaks to the past. Thank God for people like Mr. Herb Lim, the present and the future. Canadians have fought in 4 terrible wars, and this country suffered losses that are still felt today. So we bring together in ceremonies like this, all over the world, the images that bind this kind of value together. You see white crosses, you see flags, military images, medals of honor that symbolize duty and courage and sacrifice, and of course the poppy, the most enduring symbol of all, the flower of remembrance. And to demonstrate beyond any doubt, we do an extraordinary thing to show how we feel. On November the 11th, each year, we stop teaching, we close banks, we shut down government offices, many businesses lock their doors. Newspapers around the world are already running photos and stories to remind us not to glorify the war, but to remind us of what happened. We hold parades, we pray, we come together and talk and sing and remember that essential value, which is this. Each of us has a right and a responsibility to live our life free of violence and war. Every one of us, every one of you has that right. But it's also a responsibility. And so tomorrow, when we are out in the sunshine, let's remember how absolutely wonderful it is to be able to live here. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the next segment of our ceremony this morning, which is a special presentation from our drama department, drama program. It's a dance presentation. The little bit that I can tell you is that it's based on the 1001 Crane story, which is a true story about a Japanese girl who died in Hiroshima sometime after the terrible bomb at the end of the Second World War. Number of students you'll recognize. I won't introduce them by name to you. I certainly hope that somebody is about to pull the curtain back. And thank you, Mr. Lim, for your kind remarks.
Something which Mr. Lim referred to as well, that it's not just the soldiers, the sailors, and the airmen who die and are wounded in wartime, it's the children and civilians as well, and that's something that we need to think about on every Remembrance Day, not just this one, and perhaps on every day of the year. The ceremony of Remembrance Day always includes a moment of silence, and that moment of silence, which is distinguished or identified by some music at the beginning and some music. For Mr. Lim, it means fighting in a war and volunteering to go overseas into Southeast Asia, even though he, living in Canada for 3 generations, did not have the right to vote because of his racial and ethnic background. And of course, as he said in 1947, the government of Canada quite rightly changed that law. For other people that come here from other lands, it means personal experience of war in the last 10 years. So when we rise and think about what this means to each and every one of us, it does mean different things to different people. But the focus is on sacrifice and war and the need for peace. The minute of silence is introduced by the last post. The end of the minute of silence is signified by the reveille, a more cheerful piece of music which signifies a new world opening up ahead. Would you please rise for the moment of silence?